All right, so now that we've got materials applied, what we're going to do now is work with lighting. And I'm just going to say this, and I feel terrible saying it. And maybe it's just me, I hate mushrooms, and so I tell my daughter I hate mushrooms. She hates mushrooms. She's never had a mushroom, but so I hope I'm not doing this with you with lighting. Lighting is I think the hardest part about doing stuff in 3D is getting that lighting just right. And I hate to taint you, but I'm giving you all I got for my lighting. This is it. After this lecture, when you have problems, and I'll come over to your station, we will put our brains together and figure out how to fix it, because past this lecture, I don't know much about lighting. So that being said, we're still in the visualize ribbon up here, and there's one right here for lights. And so there's two different types of lights that we're going to use in AutoCAD. AutoCAD already has a light in there. You don't realize it, but that's how you're seeing your objects. So, when we put it into shaded here, do you see how there's a darker side and a lighter side? That's AutoCAD's just default lighting turned on right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to use two different lights. We're going to use a point light and a spotlight, and I'm going to show you the difference between those two, and you guys use what you want to use here. It's up to you what you decide you want to use. A point light is like holding a light bulb up, and so it's got light all the way around. It's like turning on a lamp in your living room. It illuminates all around it. I always, for point lights, I always picture my granny's house, the room that we stayed in. She slowly was renovating her house. It was built in 1913. And so some rooms were done and some rooms were really scary, like wallpaper peeling off the walls. And the one room we had to sleep in was a scary room. And it had a cord in the middle of the room hanging with a light bulb on it. And you pulled the little switch and you had to walk into a dark room, find this swinging, you reach for it and it's swinging and you had to pull the switch. And the whole, it was just a light bulb hanging from the ceiling, and it would go like this, and shadows. It was scary. But anyway, that's what I picture when I picture point lights, and that's probably why I don't use them very often. But lamps are probably a better way to imagine what a point light is. So that's point, and then the next one that we're going to do is called a spotlight. A spotlight is just like holding a flashlight out. And so with a flashlight, you've got a hot spot where it's really, really bright. And then you have what's called fall-off lighting. So it still lights up more than what you're pointing at, but it's not quite as bright. It's not in the hot spot. Another thing to kind of think of that is headlights when you're driving down the freeway or an old road or a country road or something. It lights up the road right in front of you. It's not pointing at the trees, but you can see the trees. That's the fall-off. You can see it super bright on the road, but you can see the fall-off. You can see the trees on the side of the road. So that's what our spotlight is. The reason I'm going into that much detail is you're about to see when we put in a spotlight, you can adjust the hot spot and the fall off on that. So point light, super duper easy. Right when you start to put in your first kind of light, it suggests that you turn off AutoCAD's default lighting. So you can go ahead and go for that. And a point light, super easy. I'm just going to put it down somewhere. I'm going to exit, and you can see what happened. So now that it's light right there, you can see it's really, really bright around it, but it's not. Actually, the rest of it is pretty dark because we've turned off the default lighting, so this is the only light that we have. If you deal with point lights, you might end up having to put a few around in different places to kind of illuminate things. You can also right-click and go into the properties, and you can adjust the intensity. So if that's a 1, then maybe I set it to 5, and you can see it brightens up everything else. But the problem is, look at the one that's right next to it. Now it's almost like a whitewash. It's so bright, the whole thing just looks white. So that's the thing you're going to have to get in here and kind of play around with. How intense do you want the light? What intensity do you want it at? You might also have to adjust. It really probably shouldn't be that close to an object. So if I move it out some, they're all looking a lot better. If I move it up some, now it's illuminating all of these.
It tells you the distance that the light is from the object?
It does not tell you the distance from the object. You could probably do the distance command because it has a snap to it. So you could probably snap and figure out a distance. So anyway, that's the point light. That's one option that you have. Move this one up a little bit and you can see it starting to kind of illuminate everything. Now I can come in and adjust the intensity of both of these. They're both 10 now, so that made it all a lot brighter. One kind of problem with having the lights in there is whenever I click like this, I couldn't tell, was that going to be, when I clicked right here, I couldn't tell, is that going to be closer to this? Is it going to be kind of in line with these, or is it going to be below these? When you're dealing with 3D, you can't tell. It's a flat screen, but you can't tell where you are in space. So a whole lot of times when you go to insert a light, you think that you're clicking kind of in front or maybe on the front corner of an object, and you're actually clicking below the object. So everything goes black. And you're actually, if you were to kind of orbit around, you would see the underside is really bright. So my way to kind of avoid that situation, I'll go delete these guys out, is I come in here and I draw a box. I don't know how everybody else teaches this. This is just Ashley's way to teach it. I draw a box that I know I'm going to delete later. And then I can create a light, snap it onto that box. You can even adjust the intensity here if you know what it's going to be. And then I go delete that box out. And at least this way, I know I have that exactly where I need it. I have it on the front right corner. The box thing works for me. You guys do what you want, but you'll realize as you start doing this, sometimes you'll go to put a light in, and you really feel like it was up here, but it's actually like way down there behind it. Or
well, what is the goal? To
it.
Highlight as much of these shapes as possible. You're only going to be able, all of them, just 3 sides, 4 sides, whatever.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So you're going to have to, on your particular project, you've got 12 objects. I would recommend taking a moment and lining those 12 objects up with each other. Make sure they're on the same plane, because some of your objects at this point might be some up here, some over here, some down there. So what they look like in this view, if I take this, let's do a 3D move. Take this guy right here, and I move him right there. He actually looks like he's in front, He looks like he's maybe ahead of this one, but as I rotate this around, he's way down there. So as I do lighting, right here, they all look like they're in line with each other. So as I do lighting, I'm like, oh, cool, these are all on the same plane. I'm going to put this one light, but now that one's way in the shadows. So you might take a little minute to just, you could do anything. You could draw a circle and just make sure they're all in line on that circle. You could draw a box or draw a few lines or erase some lines or something and just snap those objects onto that, so you know that they're at the same plane, that they're all on the kind of they're all on the same floor level.
Okay, so you could make star shape of lines or line, and click,
whatever you want to do.
Just put them all on there and they'll still be on the same.
Yeah, as long as your lines are all on the same plane, then you can move your objects and snap them to those lines and delete those lines out or turn off that layer, and then those are all on the same. And that's going to help you a lot, because you don't realize it. Even if you wanted to orbit yours right now, you might realize you've got some stuff.
Start moving that, and they're all
kind of all over the place.
Yeah, God.
It's hard to see. Matthew, did you have a question?
No, I'm just stretching.
That was a stretch. Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. All right, so that was the point light. The next one here is the spotlight. And so the spotlight, you're going to click where you're kind of holding the flashlight, and then you're going to pull it in the direction that you want to go. I'm going to snap right here. I'm going to exit. And so you can see this flashlight. And look, I thought I was up top, and look where I was. I thought that I was bringing it like from the top up here. But once this is there, then you can see I'm actually going to move this up to where I thought I was. I don't even know if that's where I thought I was. This is why I would draw a box. Anyway, so I've got this light right here. Do you notice how there's 2 different rings on this light? If I hover next to this one, it tells me that middle one's the hot spot. Hover next to this one, it tells me that one's my fall off. So you can grab these things by the grips and take the fall off and make it bigger. Take the hot spot, make it bigger. however you want to do that. You can adjust that spotlight. So that's the one that I use. I use that one more often. Just I feel like you have more control over, you can aim it, it's like pointing a flashlight at something instead of just illuminating kind of everything. One thing to be careful of is as you start illuminating one object, you might cast shadows on another object. And what I have found, and this is something Gabe does completely differently than I do. We both teach this differently. Gabe teaches students to get this object and this guy right here and actually group them together whenever they look right. That way, as you move this object, the light goes with it. You could totally do that. I, in my experience, have found I like to just, put all your objects on the same surface and then put maybe 2 lights. The more lights that you have in your object or in your project, I have, in my experience, it just causes more problems. And I had a guy one time I did this lecture on a Wednesday, and Monday he came into class and he had been working on it all weekend long. And I know a few of you guys have had this experience. You spend a whole weekend beating your head against the wall. Hours this guy spent on his lighting and trying to get it right. And he came in, he was so frustrated. He was like, I just can't. It's just got shadows everywhere. I'm trying to fix this one. And I went in there and he had probably almost 30 lights because he had his object and he's like, okay, this light, okay, that looks good. But dang, there's a shadow there. So here's a light there. Well, now I have to. And he had like 30 lights and he just couldn't get it right. And he was so frustrated. And I sat down with him and I was like, let's just, and we made a copy of his drawings. I wasn't messing with his original, but I was like, let's just delete out these lights and see what we can do. And what we ended up doing was 2 spotlights, from 2 different sides, and it lit up everything. And you didn't even have to worry about, I feel like the more lights you have, the more problems you're inviting, the more shadows you're inviting, the more reason you need more lights.
Yard lights,
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. And so with this point light, again, I could just draw a box and snap to that box and have that right there. Again, with the point light, you can adjust the intensity. You can adjust the hotspot angle, the fall off angle. There's a lot of stuff that you can adjust in here. You used to be able on lights, and I haven't seen it in this release of AutoCAD, you used to be able to have shadows. You could turn off shadows so that your light, this particular light, won't cast shadows. And I cannot figure out for the life of me if they just don't have that anymore as an option. I don't know. You've got this down here that says no shadows, but the shadows they're talking about are ground shadows, not shadows from one object to another object. So it's already set to no shadows, but you can still cast a shadow from one object to another. I haven't figured out, since they took that away, how to make that light. It used to be right here where you just could turn off shadows. So maybe it does already. Maybe in 2016 they don't cast shadows anymore. I don't know. So that's lighting. One thing that I do want to say is you do have an option for a sun. And with the sun, what's cool about that is you can come in here, you can mess around with the sun. Let me go into sun location. You can actually adjust. You can set the location. Let's see if this pulls it up. Oh no. Well, I'm not going to sign in for this. Maps cannot be displayed. If you sign in, then you would see a map here, and it's like a globe, and you can click in and you can set it to be Austin, Texas, and then once you set where you are, Austin, Texas, then you can come in here and you can set what day of the year it is, and you can set what. I'm trying to get it June 4th, and it won't. It's my birthday. Anyway, you can set what time of day it is. And so this is a really cool thing that you can do. And whether you're using AutoCAD or another program for it, there's a lot of programs out there that'll calculate this for you. But It's nice for energy efficiency with green building nowadays. How big do I need to make my eaves? Because the winter sun is a lot lower than the summer sun. So I can test and see where that sun is. Is it casting shadows? Is it really bright in my windows? In Austin on December 26th, at 5 o'clock p.m. Is that the worst time? Do I need to make my eaves a little bit bigger? Do I need to maybe plant a tree here? There's actually programs that'll plug into AutoCAD. There's one we used to use. It was called AccuRender. I don't know if it's still around, but I'm sure there's ones like it. But the blocks that you would bring in, it had tree blocks. The blocks that you would bring in would change depending on what time of day it was or what day of the year it was. So you could bring in a tree and it would be in the springtime, it would be in full bloom, and in the wintertime it would just be branches. Like it would know that. So you could actually kind of see and anticipate. You could even put in the growth of the tree. So a new tree versus 5 years from now, how big is that tree going to be and how much shade are we going to get from it? So this is all pretty cool stuff that you can do. I would say, AutoCAD is probably not the best program in the world to do it in, but AutoCAD has that capability.